push for these policies to be implemented in the countries because they are already there, but there is no funding for it. So that was the purpose. And that, since the Tenure Facility was founded, became the collective target. So we dared say, okay, we'll get to 50 million, at least, Indigenous peoples' territories recognized. And by recognition, we mean not only titling of collective titles, but also just governance of territories that they occupy. You see, it doesn't mean that when you don't have title, you don't have rights. You can interact with government as citizens, especially as communities. So that's what then became the target, and we are able to now raise the resources to get the funds directly to the Indigenous peoples and local community groups to do this work themselves. You see, the idea was that we don't do it, they do it. And that we only need to get the finance channeled. So what I've learned is that three things. Justice really has to be implemented through the policies that are available. So it is justice, it is rights, it is recognition, and that's the work that gets supported. And it is trust. That's the other. Trust is not just in our friendships. Trust is about collective decision-making. It's about the ability of the community to stand up and be part of a negotiation, be at the table with the land rights, even with a map. The community, Indigenous peoples and local communities get to be at the table to talk about their preferred land use, to say yes or no to an FPIC process, a free prior informed process. And that is very significant, especially with the maps that have been produced in this work. And the third point that's really important is the promotion and the expansion of the idea that it is a community that we're working together with here. It's not individuals, it's not even NGOs, it's community. It's Indigenous peoples and local communities, community, interdependence, and interbeing. Meaning nature is part of it too. So nature-based solutions, as we all say, is not really going to be on its own just nature. It's actually the stewards of nature. So then stewardship and interdependence, interbeing, these are the values that had become now a conversation in all of the negotiations. And that's been really important. Justice, trust, and the quality of life that Indigenous peoples are reaching with the ambition. Now, with all the challenges, the funds that got to the Tenure Facility essentially got distributed directly, and we have measured it last year, this year, 2023. We started with $12 million last year, now to $24 million, going directly to Indigenous peoples and local communities. Now, who among them are exactly the percentages was Myrna's question to us. 37% went directly to Indigenous peoples organizations, 20% went directly to Afro-descendant organizations, and the rest went directly to the agents, the NGOs that were chosen by especially in the DRC, by the Indigenous peoples and local communities as the agents to distribute their funding. So there is hope, you see. It's not because of us, it's because they are manifesting and showing it's their capacity that has improved so much. They can handle $1 million a year for the next 3 years. It's not small funds, it's big funds, and they actually can. And hopefully in the end, they will be handling it directly, not having to go through the Tenure Facility. So I guess what I'm saying is that we're trying to do this, but we're not alone. Our eyes doing it too. Many others here are doing it. And we could actually just need to have a common voice to say, it can be done. We don't have to make this a problem. Let the funds flow, and yes, increase it. Thank you.
You helped me there at the end, Nonette. It can be done. It can be done. Yeah, 3 words. Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn to Mohammed next. And Mohammed, Oman has been working a lot on these issues, and particularly on climate finance and advocating in places like these climate conferences. Yesterday, we heard a big announcement about the Loss and Damage Fund being agreed. I'd love to get your perspectives on progress in climate finance, in this big loss and damage announcement, and other finance mechanisms, including carbon markets. What's your take on what's been happening in those areas? If you would like to come up here, thank you.
Selamat sore, saya akan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia, karena itu silakan pasang headset Anda. Sudah? Selamat sore semua, saya ingin memulai bahwa Anda bisa memberikan bantuan dalam bentuk uang kepada masyarakat adat atau jenis pendanaan apapun. Tetapi satu hal yang Anda tidak bisa pulihkan adalah hilangnya identitas budaya masyarakat adat akibat perampasan tanah-tanah mereka, sumber daya yang mereka miliki akibat industri ekstraktif. Karena itu, jika ditanyakan kemudian apa kira-kira solusi yang perlu dilakukan dalam konteks pendanaan iklim, dan juga bagaimana pendapat kami soal pasar karbon, pertama saya ingin menyatakan bahwa masyarakat adat itu menghendaki atau menginginkan dalam konteks bukan non-market carbon market gitu ya. Yang dikehendaki adalah pertama, hal yang paling mendasar sungguhnya adalah adanya upaya yang sungguh-sungguh supaya kemudian kehilangan dan kerusakan yang dialami oleh masyarakat adat selama ini akibat pembangunan ekstraktif tadi itu, ada perusahaan tambang, ada sawit, dan juga berbagai perizinan izin konsesi kehutanan, itu dapat dipulihkan. Pertama adalah rekognisi terhadap keberadaan masyarakat adat beserta dengan wilayah adatnya dan juga sumber daya yang mereka miliki. Tanpa itu maka saya kira kita sedang membicarakan sebuah solusi yang tidak memiliki makna sama sekali. Yang kedua adalah tidak hanya berhenti di situ, tetapi bagaimana kemudian perlindungan atas sumber daya alam yang dimiliki oleh masyarakat adat, atas wilayah adat mereka, yang mereka jaga secara turun-temurun berdasarkan pengetahuan yang mereka miliki, juga soal bagaimana mengadaptasikan pengetahuan tradisional yang dimiliki oleh masyarakat adat dalam konteks menjaga wilayah adatnya. Karena saya kira di dalam banyak temuan-temuan di lapangan, fakta juga menunjukkan bahwa ada 80% sumber daya alam atau hutan yang tersisa hari ini itu adalah di bawah penguasaan atau otoritas yang dijaga oleh masyarakat adat. Anda bisa bandingkan dengan berapa banyak kemudian wilayah-wilayah hutan itu menjadi rusak akibat kemudian di bawah penguasaan negara. Bahkan negara telah menjadi agen untuk kemudian merusak hutan-hutan yang terbaik yang dimiliki oleh masyarakat itu atas nama pertambangan, sawit, dan izin-izin HPH. Kemudian yang ketiga adalah saya kira saatnya kita kemudian mendesakkan gitu ya, bagaimana kemudian pemerintah negara dan memproteksi wilayah-wilayah adat dari tadi itu, dari ekspansi perizinan industri ekstraktif seperti tambang gitu ya, perkebunan skala besar dan seterusnya. Jadi perlu ada moratorium. Jadi kemudian kita tidak bisa kemudian menyatakan bahwa setelah saya memberikan Anda dana untuk pemulihan untuk memulihkan kerusakan dan kehilangan itu maka selesai. Yang keempat adalah saya kira dalam perspektif masyarakat adat itu sangat penting bagi lembaga-lembaga atau internasional atau mekanisme pendanaan itu seharusnya berhenti untuk memberikan dana-dana bagi perusahaan yang selama ini merusak wilayah dan juga lingkungan hidup masyarakat adat. Saya ingin mencontohkan misalnya beberapa dalam konteks Indonesia gitu ya. Ada satu perusahaan namanya Medco di Merauke, Papua. Itu kemudian mendapatkan pendanaan atas nama perubahan iklim. Baik oleh institusi di Indonesia maupun oleh lembaga internasional. Tetapi faktanya kemudian perusahaan ini mengambil alih atau merampas hak hidup masyarakat adat atau orang Marin di Papua itu, dan hutan itu merupakan wilayah hidup mereka. Yang kedua, saya ingin mencontohkan misalnya soal bagaimana salah satu perusahaan internasional, Melkor Group itu bekerjasama dengan perusahaan nasional di Indonesia, itu juga mengambil alih atau merampas ruang hidup masyarakat adat di Aru dan juga Kalimantan Tengah. Jadi artinya apa? Kalau tadi prinsip pertama soal rekognisi tadi tidak dijalankan, kemudian bagaimana memproteksi wilayah-wilayah masyarakat adat itu, dan juga lembaga pendanaan internasional masih mengkontribusikan sebagian besar pendanaan itu kepada perusahaan, maka itu sebenarnya kita sedang bergerak mundur. Nah, karena itu yang paling penting dalam pandangan kami adalah bagaimana memastikan bahwa pendanaan-pendanaan itu atau dukungan langsung bagi masyarakat adat. Tadi Ibu Nonette sudah menyampaikan bahwa ada inisiatif yang sudah dibangun melalui Tenure Facility, dan saya kira itu perlu dikembangkan. Yang lain adalah kita ingin memastikan bahwa proses-proses penjagaan sumber daya alam dan wilayah adat yang dimiliki oleh masyarakat itu bisa terus dilanjutkan gitu ya. Nah, sebagai contoh misalnya di Indonesia saat ini kami di Aman itu sudah melakukan pemetaan partisipasi sebesar seluas 26,9 juta hektar. Tapi Anda tahu berapa banyak dari 26,9 juta hektar itu yang dikembalikan kepada masyarakat melalui hutan adat? Hanya 2.444,196 hektar. Padahal seluruh proses, misalnya pemetaan partisipatif untuk menunjukkan di mana wilayah adat masyarakat itu berada, kemudian juga termasuk proses legislasi, membentuk peraturan daerah, itu telah dikerjakan. Jadi sebenarnya pemerintah itu hanya mengerjakan sekitar 1% dari pekerjaan yang telah dikerjakan oleh Aman. Jadi untuk melakukan pengakuan terhadap masyarakat adat. Hal yang terbalik adalah sepanjang tahun 2023 sampai November 2023 ini ada 28 kasus yang terjadi. Dan itu kemudian salah satu kasus yang merebak adalah soal soal mitigasi perubahan iklim tadi itu. Misalnya saya mencontohkan saat saya berdiri di sini ada 7 warga Poceleok yang sedang dikriminalisasi karena mereka mempertahankan hak atas tanahnya yang akan dijadikan sebagai proyek geothermal. Jadi bagaimana mungkin kita akan bilang bahwa apa yang terjadi hari ini, upaya-upaya yang dilakukan hari ini itu telah berkontribusi bagi bagaimana mengakui pengetahuan tradisional yang dimiliki oleh masyarakat. Pada saat yang sama, upaya untuk mengatasi perubahan iklim itu masih dilakukan oleh korporasi yang juga rakus tanah. Yang terakhir adalah selain tadi dukungan langsung, saya kira yang perlu dipikirkan adalah bagaimana memastikan bahwa dukungan itu tidak hanya untuk rekognisi, tapi juga bagaimana memulihkan kedaulatan masyarakat adat terhadap tanahnya, dan pada saat yang sama juga memberikan insentif terhadap dukungan pengembangan ekonomi. Di Aman misalnya kita menjalankan namanya gerakan pulang kampung dan juga badan usaha milik masyarakat adat. Jadi saya kira menjadi paralel antara proses rekognisi, kemudian pengetahuan terus itu diadaptasi sebagai bagian dari mengatasi perubahan iklim, dan terakhir adalah soal bagaimana mengembangkan ekonomi masyarakat adat. Terima kasih dan selamat sore.
Thanks so much, Mohammed. Now, our final panelist, Jose Luis, question for you. Afro-descendant people's organizations are also taking great steps to gain recognition of their legal and territorial rights. Can you tell us about the importance of Afro-descendant territories in Latin America, where you are based, for action on climate and nature conservation, and what progress has been made in advancing recognition of their rights? The floor is yours.
Muy buenas tardes para todas y todos. Uno normalmente comienza a escuchar las presentaciones anteriores y queda con unas preocupaciones bastante grandes. Es que las coincidencias casi que a nivel global están dadas en los distintos pueblos. O sea, cuando estamos hablando de comunidades, y hablamos, en este caso, por ejemplo, nosotros Yo vengo de Colombia, hago parte del movimiento afrodescendiente de América Latina y el Caribe. Soy de una organización que se llama PCN, que traduce Proceso de Comunidades Negras. Nosotros venimos trabajando el tema que tiene que ver con la violación de los derechos humanos, pero también venimos trabajando todo el tema de tierra y territorio. De hecho, con TF, con RRI, con muchas organizaciones, hemos venido coincidiendo en la necesidad de poner de presentes que es que el territorio es la vida. Y como un eslogan que tenemos, el territorio es la vida no se vende, se ama y se defiende. Es decir, es un principio que nosotros tenemos con relación al territorio y a la tierra. En ese sentido, nosotros hemos venido trabajando con alrededor de 4 escenarios fundamentales. Y estos 4 escenarios están dados. Uno, el primero es cómo los tomadores de decisiones a nivel global pueden tener instrumentos que les permita decir alrededor de qué es que se va a invertir esos recursos, porque también en el marco de estas coincidencias que acabo de hablar es el financiamiento climático. Es decir, el financiamiento climático a través del tiempo no ha estado dado para las comunidades realmente, sino que casi siempre estos recursos se han estado entregando básicamente a ONG, a ONG grandes, que finalmente se convierten en intermediarios y no llegan estos recursos tampoco a las comunidades. Y eso se evidencia. Es decir, llevamos muchos años en el marco del financiamiento climático, pero las condiciones de las poblaciones, tanto afrodescendientes, indígenas o comunidades locales, siguen día a día empeorando. Y otra coincidencia que también identificamos, y esa coincidencia tiene que ver, donde hay bosques normalmente casi que a nivel global hay conflictos. Y como donde hay bosque y conflicto es cómo tenemos instrumentos para trabajar con esas comunidades que están al interior de esos bosques o de esos territorios para poder afrontar esos conflictos. Y son conflictos que normalmente vienen de fuera, no son conflictos que son creados dentro de los territorios, porque la gente, las comunidades indígenas, afro o comunidades locales siempre han vivido en armonía al interior de sus territorios. Estos otros son los que conducen o los que traen esos conflictos. Es por esa razón que nosotros, otra tercera coincidencia, es que el solo hecho de no reconocerte como sujeto de derecho al interior de tu territorio también se convierte al final en un instrumento de violencia. O sea, como no te reconozco cuando cualquiera de nuestros líderes o lideresas se manifiestan, ya son sujetos o son personas que están incriminadas, sea por el Estado, sea por empresas privadas o sea por las mafias que manejan los diferentes negocios que tienen que ver con el marco de lo ambiental. Nosotros, desde la perspectiva de América Latina y el Caribe, siempre hemos identificado 2 cosas en el marco de pueblos afrodescendientes. Yo no podría venir a hablar aquí de comunidades indígenas o de comunidades locales, sino que tendría que hablar en este momento de comunidades, quiénes somos y qué hacemos. Nosotros venimos trabajando como también dos escenarios. Un escenario tiene que ver con dónde estamos, cuántos somos, qué tenemos, nuestro aporte también a todo el proceso de cambio climático y qué requerimos. En ese sentido, comenzamos a hacer un ejercicio hace algunos años y comenzamos a identificar que en América Latina tenemos alrededor de 205 millones de hectáreas tituladas colectivamente a comunidades afrodescendientes en América Latina y el Caribe. 205 millones de hectáreas, esas 205 millones de hectáreas tituladas colectivamente, donde su mayoría están en Brasil, en Colombia, en Ecuador, en Centroamérica, donde están su mayoría. Sin embargo, son 205. Y esas 205 millones de hectáreas que están representadas, hay un número importante de 1.271 millones de hectáreas que colindan con áreas protegidas. Es decir, su aporte en el marco de la conservación alrededor del cambio climático está dado también a cómo interactuamos con esos instrumentos de conservación que se han creado en el marco del cambio climático. De esto, El 67% de estas áreas, principalmente en Colombia, Nicaragua, Ecuador y Surinam, están ahí principalmente en estos países. Y eso, el 33% de estas áreas están localizadas en Brasil, en municipios con presencia de comunidades quilombolas quienes no cuentan con derechos colectivos reconocidos. Es decir, también en el marco, y es algo que uno quisiera quisiera no estar señalándolo casi que en todos los escenarios donde participa, es que también ese proceso de segregación, de racismo estructural que se viene dando alrededor, tanto de comunidades afrodescendientes, pero también comunidades indígenas, la negación de que ese otro ya no es un niño chiquito donde el otro tiene que tomar decisiones por él, eso ha causado que hoy muchos de nosotros que participamos en estos escenarios estamos diciendo, hey, el financiamiento climático tiene que venir también y caer directamente a los escenarios de decisión de los diferentes pueblos. Nosotros de estas áreas, el 5% más o menos que calculamos sean entre 9.5 o 10 millones de hectáreas, en algunas regiones han sido legalizadas, en algunos países. Es decir, aunque tenemos unos títulos colectivos, la legalización solamente de estas 205 millones de hectáreas solamente se ha dado en un 10%, la legalización. Finalmente, yo lo que quisiera señalar es que se requiere seguir construyendo escenarios de reconocimiento al otro, y ese escenario de reconocimiento al otro tiene que ver con que también podemos empoderarnos nosotros y que los otros y nosotros podemos trabajar conjuntamente. Así que muchas gracias.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Myrna, I wanted to turn back to you if I can. I know you were a speaker earlier on setting the context, but you also work on the Pawanka Fund, which is an Indigenous-led fund that supports Indigenous ways of knowing and learning. We heard from a number of our panelists about, the challenges of, getting finance and supporting these on the ground. So I would love to hear a bit more about the fund's approach, some of the key learnings and insights you've had from following that progress since its establishment in 2014. Thank you.
From here, from there. Thank you. Yes, the Pawanka Fund is an Indigenous-led fund that was established in 2014 for two reasons. One, as you have heard, on less than 1% of fund goes to Indigenous peoples. So the idea was to create an instrument that would channel resources directly to Indigenous communities. And the second reason is that we need to educate philanthropy. We need to change the power dynamics in philanthropy. And we say that we come to this world of philanthropy with our traditional practice of sharing. So it's not only that we get something from people that have more than Indigenous peoples, is that Indigenous peoples come to relate with the philanthropic world with our practice of sharing. We have land, we have territory, we have knowledge, we have values, and we bring that into the relation. So the idea is that we promote through an Indigenous-led fund those two. We bring resources to community directly, but at the same time, we try to educate the philanthropic world so we can really change that power dynamic. Until now, we have been able to raise I'm also in the land tenure facility, but we have raised not that amount. We are an Indigenous-led fund. We need people to have trust in Indigenous-led funds. So we have been able to raise resources. We have supported more than 500 initiatives in the 7 sociocultural regions of the world, because that is another thing that we also try to bring to the conversation. Indigenous peoples in the North, in the South, in the global South, in the North, face big gaps when they are compared to the non-Indigenous. So we need resources both in the 7 sociocultural regions. We have we support as Pawanka Fund well-being from the point of view of Indigenous peoples. What means well-being? Regenerating relation with Mother Earth, strengthening strong governance in Indigenous institutions, supporting intergenerational transmission of knowledge, supporting youth, women empowerment, economic empowerment, climate resilience. But we do not look at all of these entry points as something that is separated. For Indigenous peoples, everything is, our world vision is integral, it's holistic, and these are entry points. When we look at what we have been able to support from Pawanka Fund for climate resilience in the 7 sociocultural regions, what have we learned? Some of the lessons. One, Indigenous peoples are promoting changes that are related with land rights, changes that are related with their participation in defining policies in their state. In the second place, Indigenous peoples are applying their traditional knowledge to read weather, traditional knowledge to plant, traditional knowledge related with weather in general. In the third place, you promote recognition and protection of Mother Earth, but you also promote using Mother Earth to survive. So food sovereignty is one of the main entry points. In women, youth, everybody wants that their land rights to be recognized, because we want to produce food for our family. So food production, seeds, healthy food, Indigenous food system is one of important component of what we can call climate resilience, health, traditional health, medicinal plants. That is something that is very strongly related with traditional knowledge, but also innovation. Traditional knowledge combined with other knowledge systems to innovate, to improve control over our territories, to use different type of instruments to measure if invaders or colonizers are coming into our territories. So in general, what we have seen from Pawanka Fund is that there is a movement of Indigenous peoples promoting more territorial funds, more Indigenous-led funds. So that's an area that I think that is very important to consider when we are talking about channeling resources directly to Indigenous peoples, because it means that we, through the Indigenous-led funds, we're trying to change the way in which philanthropy until now has related with Indigenous peoples. We apply, for example, a cultural due diligence when we assessed the initiatives that are supported by in Indigenous communities. So the idea is an intercultural approach, a different type of approach when we are working with Indigenous peoples, because the main principle is to respect self-determination. Thank you.
some interventions and questions also from the audience. And I wanted to start, there's another really important initiative here in the room and some leaders in the room, Indigenous Information Network, which works on issues that affect and impact Indigenous peoples and local communities, and focus in particular on women, girls, children and youth, and other vulnerable members of those communities. So I believe we have somebody, is it Nayan from Indigenous Information Network? I would love to, if you could come up here, perhaps it'll be easier for those watching online, and just maybe offer us some insights from the work that you've been doing in that network.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Nayan from Indigenous Information Network Kenya, and I work with Indigenous communities just back down there in the ground, an organization called the Baran Women Group. And I am happy to be in this meeting, and because of all that I have had, I am very happy. And I just wanted to talk about Indigenous communities, what we are just doing down there in the ground, which is related to forest solutions. One of the main things we all know that Indigenous peoples and local communities are on the forefront of taking care of the land. And one thing that I just want to mention is that rights of Indigenous peoples must be respected. Because when Indigenous peoples does not have peace in their minds, even if we talk, and they are being violated each and every time, they don't have time, they don't have time to develop, they don't have time to take care of their land. When I give an example in Kenya, just right now, we have a community called the Okie community. They are forest peoples and they depend on land. And now there is eviction which is taking place and they have nowhere to go. So those people are now having problems. And this is why I'm talking about Indigenous people's rights. And what do we need, or what are we going to do so that these rights will be strengthened? One of the main things that, yes, we are talking about finance. Most of the people are saying that finance can help. Yes, it can help. And also, what we need is to come together. We must work together as Indigenous peoples. We must form a partnership and collaborations so that we exchange ideas and come up with a concrete solution that can help us as a whole. Also, according to adaptations and mitigations, we all know that there is different mechanisms that we may use to adapt and mitigate to all these things, but we need education. Most of the activities need education. We need to train our people. We need to make Indigenous peoples know that this is our right. We need to make Indigenous peoples know that our traditional knowledge is very important. We need to make them know that our cultural activities are very important, because most of them doesn't know. Most of them, they are not aware about their rights. And when they are being evicted, just like the way that I have said, they are just suffering because they don't know they don't have knowledge. They don't have education that will make them at least mitigate or adapt to the situation. Also, to youth and children, because of climate change. Most of our children as Indigenous peoples, most of our youth, they are suffering. And the main thing that they are suffering is because we are losing our traditional knowledge. Because these young people nowadays, they don't have, the older people are not advising the younger people on what the environment was at first and where we are now going to. That's why I'm saying we have to start just from the beginning. We have to bring even children and everybody on board to fight with this climate change and to come together. Thank you.
Great. We now have some time for questions to our panelists or speakers, or if you'd like to make, I'd say, a very short, sort of 1 minute, 2 minutes maximum per person, just reflections on what you've heard as well. I think we have a microphone over there. Do I have anybody who'd like to ask a question? The lady back there.
Thank you so much. My name is Chatelea Tranamil, and I am based in the Netherlands, and I was born in Chile. I'm Mapuche Pawanka. The reason why I feel very much aligned with all that have been said is that it's so unequal, the financial systems in relation to the climate solutions. And for me, it was almost impossible to get here. So I did a crowdfund with my friends to even get here, to make sure that I am here, to make sure that the flight ticket has been paid, that accommodation have been paid. And this is really something that I also want to acknowledge. It's not only about governments or NGOs or whatever organizations, it's also about individuals. So I see myself as a indigenous climate justice activist, and I'm struggling to get here, but yet now I'm here. I think we need to make some collaboration between not only NGOs, but also make sure that you include individuals as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you. I want to give the mic to my friend Raki because it's a special day for Papua.
Well, thank you for forwarding the mic. Hello, everyone. My name is Raki. I'm from West Papua, which is the western half of the island of New Guinea, partly of Indonesia, and the world's largest tropical island. And I want to underline the messages, the importance of indigenous peoples. Together with my sister in the Netherlands, we're one of the few indigenous activists who are educating very prominent institutions, the financial authority, about the immense role that indigenous peoples are playing as guardians of more than 80% of world's remaining biodiversity. And as we heard, they got less than 1% of the global funding. And this is also a reflection to the big NGOs in the Netherlands. We're saying, the fact that the only 2 indigenous activists from the Netherlands has to find a way to cope is basically exposing how funding has been outplayed the last 100 years. And this is the way forward is give indigenous peoples the lead. They're the guardians for thousands of years of these ecosystems. So as soon as we protect their lives, you will see that the ecosystems and the forest will be protected as well. And this is why I really love to be here, to hear all these wonderful insights and lessons learned, and to be here with my sister to educate institutions how they can become a powerful change maker to support indigenous peoples and therefore to protect the forest and the ecosystems. Thank you.
Thanks. I have a question down here. Thank you. Reflection.
In my language, I'm an Indigenous man from Torres Straits, which is one of the Indigenous peoples of Australia. And in Torres Straits, we are seeing that we are going to be the first asylum seekers in a first world country. And I just want to reflect on Dr. Myrna K. Cunningham. Kimeso in my language is thank you very much. My reflection is on I'm currently writing a discussion paper looking at a rights-based approach, and I presented this to Parliament in Australia 2 weeks ago. Because it is now we are fighting over the courts as opposed to fighting where we have taken up the fights on our country, which is our land. And you stating using our governance system, strengths and participation from the ones causing the problem. It's the fight that we've had with the Straight Aid case. We had the UN backing to take on our government, and the government still tends to find a way to sidestep. So I'm very grateful on, the way that you expressed on how we do this. And, respecting our rights, connecting different worlds, plus a vision of Indigenous people. For me, my work is to how do we embed Indigenous knowledges into policy, is to take the fight over the court systems, is to actually see how we can implement our knowledge systems at that cultural interface. So this, I believe, is what you stated, is an intergenerations of Indigenous knowledges. So I just wanted to say, Minaki Meso, Ngite Ya Mule, in Kalau Kawauya, which is my language, a very big thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. This next one.
Gracias. Buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Rodolfo Berrugate, territorio en Verá, Panamá. Quiero aprovechar el espacio para dejar un mensaje claro. En Panamá, los territorios indígenas están dirigidos por los caciques, son caciques en territorio. Quiero dejar un mensaje claro de parte de mi jefe que me envió para decirle lo siguiente. Los que hablaron anteriormente plantearon claramente, sienten una preocupación y es la misma la de nosotros. ¿Por qué los fondos no bajan directamente hacia los territorios a través de las autoridades tradicionales nuestras, que son los que representan, son escogidos por su pueblo, para que dirija a su pueblo? Eso es por un lado. Y Naciones Unidas tiene oficina en Panamá, conoce muy bien cómo se trabaja en Panamá con los territorios indígenas. Por eso reclamamos ahora, exigimos más bien que los fondos sean directamente hacia los territorios, a través de las autoridades que hay en las diferentes comarcas que le llamamos nosotros allá. Lo otro es, ¿por qué tanto protocolo? Ahora con la conservación del cambio climático, ahora de los bonos de carbono, en fin. Nos han preguntado cuántos años nosotros, más de 500 años, hemos protegido el bosque. Si ven el mapa de Panamá, los bosques están en las comarcas, en los territorios indígenas. Allí están los bosques. En el resto no lo van a encontrar, porque nuestros ancestros nos enseñaron. ¿Por qué no van directamente? ¿Cómo ustedes nos han preguntado, las Naciones Unidas o las organizaciones internacionales nos han preguntado cómo nosotros hemos protegido el bosque por más de 500 años y hemos sobrevivido? No necesitamos tanto protocolo porque tiene que haber un ente intermediario para poder bajar los fondos. No logramos entender eso. En Panamá existe la FAO, Naciones Unidas. Los fondos que se consiguen a través de los indígenas de Panamá y tal vez en otros países de Centroamérica que pasan lo mismo, se invierten, el 80% se va en consultoría, un tema que ya no tiene agotado. Crecí escuchando consultoría, ya es con más de 50 años de edad. Sigo escuchando consultoría a través de la FAO y otras organizaciones. Con los gobiernos es peor todavía. Todo se invierte en consultoría. Miles de dólares se van allí. Cuando vas al territorio es un 5% lo que llega allá. Entonces seguimos en la pobreza, nos utilizan a nosotros. Ya estamos cansados de eso. Que tomen en cuenta Naciones Unidas, los que están al frente, los que hacen, que esto sea una voz que se escuche y que quizás pronto nosotros obtengamos resultados de esto. Muchas gracias.
Do we have any more reflections? Yes, just here, thank you.
Sorry, I just need to say something. When we talk about this topic is really interesting, proven climate solutions. But what we see here as Indigenous peoples is most of the actions that is discussed in the UNFCCC is actually to choose that unproven or proven as opposite of solutions, which is market-based. People are talking about Article 6 and the controversy of Article 6.4, 6.4. I think we should focus more on the Article 6.8, which is non-market solutions. And with the support from the climate finance, with all different initiatives, different solutions from the communities, with the support from climate finance, it can upscale in the length, in the scale of that you want to see. Without it, it's still maybe now in local level, as proven a solution in local level. But with the support of the climate finance from donors community, donor societies, it can upscale into the scale that you want to see. And that can be proven as real solutions. Thank you.
I think I have time for one more. Would anyone else like to offer some thoughts? Yes, lady here.
Hi, I'm a student from Swarthmore College. I actually had a question. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys feel of like the role of mining for minerals when it comes to the energy transition? Do you think it undermines some of the goals we talked about today? And like, what do you want to see when it comes to mining? And how can that be done justly or in any capacity?
Thanks so much. So perfect timing. I actually do want to turn it back to our panelists just to offer some final reflections on the discussion that we've had here today, some of the interventions also from the audience members. Obviously this question on mining as well, if you want to offer some thoughts on that. But really, what's the take-home message here? What's in this noise and swirl of everything's happening here at COP28? What's the real key message that you want to get out into this assembled gathering of global leaders and governments and businesses and civil society and financial institutions and everyone else? What do we really need to be pushing out from this room today? If I can start with you, Jose Luis. Thank you.
¿Desde aquí? Que yo creo que ese proceso de la transición energética no tiene reversa. ¿Sí? No tiene reversa y hoy el mundo entero está alrededor de esos temas. Tenemos un conjunto de conflictos, los países desarrollados con los países no desarrollados. Entonces, todo este tema de financiamiento también tiene que ver, transversaliza también todos estos procesos en los diferentes países no desarrollados, porque está sucediendo lo mismo que sucede en los otros procesos. Los conflictos armados, los asesinatos están asociados a esos procesos. Te puedo decir, en algunos países de América Latina donde la minería se da con mayor fuerza, está compitiendo con los cultivos de coca o con los cultivos de uso ilícito. ¿Sí? Están compitiendo y compiten fuertemente. ¿Y quiénes los están asumiendo? Las grandes mafias o los grupos armados que existen a nivel global. Hay una relación y una complacencia con algunos gobiernos y ahí es que tendríamos que resolver qué va a pasar con eso y esa manipulación que han venido sufriendo muchas de las comunidades alrededor de este tipo de negocios que se establecen al interior de los territorios donde existen básicamente comunidades o donde de una u otra forma generan algunos daños, algunos no, muchos efectos negativos que afectan básicamente a comunidades más vulnerables de América Latina. Por lo tanto, se requiere un proceso tanto de los jóvenes, de todos los gobiernos que comencemos a seguir tratando estos temas para poder tomar algunas acciones concretas alrededor de la minería y todos esos otros productos que vienen causando esos ruidos al interior de nuestros territorios.
Thanks.
Gracias.
Thank you. And Mohammed, thank you. Over to you.
Saya mau merespon apakah tambang itu bisa menjawab persoalan soal transisi energi? Jawaban saya tidak. Karena dalam banyak hal yang terjadi di kami di masyarakat adat, justru tambang itu menjadi salah satu persoalan mendasar yang kemudian merampas hak kami sebagai masyarakat adat. Saya ingin mencontohkan 2 kasus terakhir yang sedang berlangsung hari ini. Kasus di Halmahera Utara di Indonesia, di Maluku Utara, itu sedang berhadapan dengan satu perusahaan tambang, di mana kemudian wilayah adatnya itu diambil, kemudian sekarang sumber mata air terakhirnya itu pun tercemar akibat proses pertambangan. Karena prinsip dari transisi energi adalah bagaimana memastikan keadilan, kemudian partisipasi yang penuh dan efektif, kemudian dia transparan, tidak melanggar HAM, dan juga pemerataan. Jadi menurut saya itu bukan jawaban. Terakhir dari saya ingin menyatakan bahwa sebagaimana saya sampaikan di awal, bahwa upaya pendanaan tentu saja tidak akan mengembalikan semuanya apa yang terjadi di masyarakat adat. Karena itu memang diperlukan secara sungguh-sungguh upaya pendanaan itu, bahwa masyarakat adat itu mendapatkan manfaat yang sebenar-benarnya, tentu saja dalam proses yang berkeadilan, tadi juga melalui proses yang free, fair, information, consent. Jadi bukan FPIC yang manipulatif yang banyak dilaksanakan selama ini. Saya kira itu yang menjadi dasar-dasar atau prinsip yang mesti dilaksanakan kalau kita bicara soal bagaimana soal transisi energi, bagaimana soal pendanaan iklim yang berkeadilan, dan bagaimana kemudian kita bicara soal keberlanjutan dari satu proses-proses pembangunan di masa mendatang untuk generasi muda seluruh dunia ini. Terima kasih.
Thanks, Mohammed. Nonette, your key takeaways.
Yes, the land that is full of the resources that we need, nature that's around the places where indigenous peoples live, they've always been under threat, and indigenous peoples have always been standing to defend them. It didn't matter whether their lives are at stake. That's what I've seen in the last 30 years. So I hope this COP would begin to realize is it's not only listening, but it's also really doing. And regardless of what they do, I trust indigenous peoples will not change their positioning on defending nature and standing with nature and standing with each other in a community. So our role is to continue to support that and find every path we can to really help support that. And I do believe that that positivity and that intention is going to win.
Thank you. Myrna, any final reflections from you?
I think we have been clear. Recognition, human rights-based approach, respecting indigenous people's rights, but also supporting the conditions for the governance system of indigenous peoples to be able not only to make the best decisions for their communities, but also to relate with the other governance structures to bridge that gap that we face in our communities between indigenous peoples and the rest of the world. Indigenous peoples have the solution. We just need to have the opportunity. Y para el hermano de Panamá, definitivamente es muy el ambiente o el sistema de trabajo en el sistema de Naciones Unidas es muy complicado. Llevamos 100 años los pueblos indígenas asistiendo a reuniones de Naciones Unidas. Hasta ahora nos están comenzando a escuchar, pero las respuestas todavía son muy limitadas. No perdamos la confianza que si nos articulamos todos los pueblos indígenas y logramos construir buenas alianzas con distintos socios, que es lo que hemos hecho hasta el momento, nuestro mensaje va a seguir permeando, va a seguir abriendo. Y como decimos, solo el coraje, la unidad en este mundo lleno de incertidumbre con tantas crisis va a poder llevarle mejores soluciones a nuestras comunidades. O sea, y tiene razón usted de sentirse frustrado, y tiene razón su líder de sentirse frustrado, pero digámosle a su líder que lo sigan mandando, sigan viniendo y sigamos caminando todos estos lugares tan complicados, porque es la única forma que hemos encontrado desde hace 100 años para llevar los mensajes de nuestras comunidades al ámbito internacional y después regresar con las soluciones a presionar a nuestros gobiernos y a presionar a los que nos oprimen en nuestras comunidades. No nos queda otra solución, porque si no, todos vamos a desaparecer. Gracias.
Thank you. We're just in the final few minutes. Dara, just briefly, maybe just in sort of 30 seconds, if you could, next steps for the Forest Declaration assessment, is it going to continue sort of championing and building on this kind of analysis that you've been doing?
Yeah, of course. I think the stories that we've heard today just show us how much it is that governments are missing out on when they choose not to listen to communities. Yeah, as I think Myrna said it well, they're betting on the unproven solutions where here we have a really proven solution. And I think, as you pointed out, a lot of the unproven solutions, a lot of these, we're starting to mine in places where there's pristine forests to get minerals for building electric cars, and it's madness, right? And I mean, the way I think about it sometimes, can you imagine the government trying to do the energy transition without talking to energy companies, without talking to clean energy companies? Well, that's what it's like trying to stop deforestation without talking to Indigenous people and Afro-descendants and local communities. It's absolute madness. So at the Forest Declaration Assessment, we're going to continue our work every single year. We're going to be putting out our reports, seeing what the progress is and holding governments to account. And it's really useful to hear the stories from our partners. And I'd encourage all of you and anyone who has stories to share and has data, because we're only as good as the data we have and as the partners we have. So please do come and talk to me if you're interested in joining that. I mean, just as a final thing, I'd say that we're, as civil society and as research organizations, we will continue holding governments to account. But governments need to start holding themselves to account. And you saw back in Glasgow a couple of years ago, 140 nations signed on to the Glasgow Leaders Declaration, but no accountability mechanism, right? No system for actually reporting on their progress. And so we'll continue to hold them accountable, but governments also need to start holding a mirror up to themselves.
Thanks, Dara. And Ashley, please, some final reflections from you on this amazing session.
Yeah, thank you all. And we're just getting started here at COP, and being here on stage with these planetary leaders and pathfinders and influencers for thriving futures is part of a growing movement for change, and one that's bringing about the future that we seek. And appreciating the urgency that you've heard here today is critical to that future. We'll continue to marry the data of the good work that Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant peoples, communities, local communities are doing, but we need to also continue to put pressure on the finance to invest in the mechanisms and tools that they have worked so hard to develop that are working so well. The Indigenous-led funds, the Tenure facility, Clarify, Rights and Resources Institute. There are so many tools that can now be used for this direct investment. So we are here among giants, and many of whom are women, and I want to acknowledge women at the center of this work and the good work that you're doing. And we're among world leaders here, like Mia Motley, who shared a really remarkable blueprint for global economic transformation. But then you have people like Dr. Myrna Cunningham and Nonette Royo, who are thinking upstream alongside communities of how you prevent the challenges of the climate and nature disasters. And as we continue to study, if we have to shape it in financial terms, the investment and the impact that these investments have, it is boundless. It is remarkable. And so I just want to thank the guiding committee of Pawanka Fund. I want to thank our friends at PCN, I want to thank our Indigenous Information Network friends. Thanks for being here. Our friends at Amman, our friends at Rights and Resources Institute, Meridian, and Climate Focus. We're honored to sit among such brilliant people that are doing such remarkable work. And the strategic partnership and collaboration has to continue. And we have to continue to center the seat at the table, the voices, and the investment. And so we hope to come out of COP with more of that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, that's all we have time for, I'm afraid. But thank you so much to all of our speakers and panelists. Thank you so much to all of you who've come here in person, and thank you to all of those who are watching via the live stream. Also really want to give a shout out to our amazing interpreters. Thank you so much, and the technical support team here. They've been fantastic. And with that, I draw this session to a close. Thank you.